Here's one of our favorite clips from Neighborly Discourse with Billy and Steve.
And this is why I hate doing this. My phone is a lot easier to navigate. So Lois gets the job at Fox News.
Okay.
And they're like, you need to get a story on Michael Moore. We think he's gay and all this stuff. Was that news? It's news. So they go to the house, Michael Moore's house, and Rush Limbaugh walks out. And they're like, oh, my God, he's gay with Rush Limbaugh. So they go back to the executives, show them the tape. Oh, this isn't news. But Michael Moore is a homosexual.
Right.
Yeah, but again, for the episode, not in real life.
Okay.
No, but we proved it. Yeah, but it's with Rush Limbaugh, and he's kind of like our right champion, so we can't degrade him.
Right.
So put the news away.
Okay.
So it goes with what you're saying. It's by omission. We've proven it, but it's also going to hurt us. So let's just get rid of it.
Right.
So I wanted to play that whole clip, but it only got the Michael Moore part. It didn't get to the part where like Fox is saying, "Don't show that. That's bad for us too."
So, but would you agree that censorship is wrong?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
If you're willing to go after someone else, you have to accept that it could come back to you.
So going back to what she said that she said earlier, just put the news out there and let the people decide. In fact, we've said this multiple times on the show, right?
Yeah.
There was I wanted to come in armed with this information, but I don't have it. Maybe you can look it up as I'm speaking. Mm-hmm. But there was a research paper that was done by this research group that basically took, I think, 30 Fox News watchers who watch it religiously and paid them to watch CNN for 30 days. I don't remember the number of people, but I think it was 30 days was how long they wanted them to watch. Like, stop watching Fox, watch CNN. And then they paid the same number of people who are CNN loyalists and say, okay, for 30 days, stop watching CNN and watch Fox. Mm-hmm. And what they found, two things, there's so much that I can talk about, but two things I want to point out is that, one, both sets said the same thing, which is, I am hearing things on this other channel that I wouldn't have heard on my channel.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, and they're not saying that in a negative way, like, you know, they're giving me BS. It's just saying that I'm hearing certain stories that I would not have heard if I was not on this channel, because the channel that I watch don't talk about this stuff. So that's the number one thing that they saw. But the number two thing, which is very interesting, is that as soon as the checks stopped, they reverted back to their channels. They're like, yo, I ain't watching that anymore. And they went back to what they were comfortable with. And I realized that, and I'm proud of you for saying this. Like, you posted the CNN article on the verbiage of what happened with the Florida and the math books. Is that I was telling Jeff this, that I have to consciously, it's a conscious effort, because I get feeds all the time from 4 different sources. 2 of them are right and 2 of them are left. I always go to the left first. I always read what the left has to say about the subject matter first before I go to the right, because I know that I lean right so strong that I want to tamp that down. I want to tamp my bias down, and I want to hear the other point of view. Yeah. You know, and that's not easy, man. That I don't know if it's easy for you, but for me, it is definitely not easy, and it's a daily thing that I have to subject myself to say, listen to the other side before you form your opinion. So,
well, as you are the political barometer on here. I don't watch either of them, so it's not that big of an issue
it's not
for
the big,
me.
So you don't care who you listen to, basically.
No, because odds are I'm not going to listen to either one of them. I'm looking here. Like I just because there's the Guardian, CNN, Scoon TV, Media Light, all these things about that thing you talked about.
Okay.
And here's where he gets right to it. At the end of the testing, the groups took 3 rounds of news surveys. 2 significant findings emerged. Fox and CNN covered different topics during the survey period, and Fox and CNN group changed their attitudes on several things. Nothing in here about the CNN people changing their views for Fox.
Did you just say Fox and CNN?
Yeah, the people from Fox watching CNN changed their views. Nothing about how the people who on CNN watch Fox.
Where are you reading
this
that?
This is Yahoo.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. I actually watched the interview with Brian Stelter, I think his name is, when he was interviewing these researchers.
Yeah.
And Do you know who Brian Stelter is? Okay, so first of all, I can't stand looking at the guy. I can't
Yeah.
even take him seriously. I can't even believe they put him on TV. Like, really?
He is an elitist at the
At
fullest
I mean, you
level.
can smell the elitist. It comes through the TV, right? But anyway, bottom line, he was chomping at the bit. He was excited about this interview. This was the interview of all interviews. I got the smoking gun. I'm gonna put it on Fox. And you could just see it, right? And so he's having this conversation. They're giving their responses, whatever the case may be. And then one of the interviewees said, you know, that when the Fox people watch CNN, they, you know, heard things they didn't want to hear. And then Brian just jumped on it. Yes. So that it sounds to me that, you know, whatever. And then the guy said, but listen, Brian, it's the same way. It's the exact same thing on the other side.
Yeah.
And you can see the smoke coming out of Brian's ear. And he said, like, it sounds to me like you're trying to play both sides. He said, I'm not trying to play both sides. I'm just trying to tell you what the information says. Both of you guys play the same game. Both of you guys are manicuring your reports for your audience. And both of you guys are omitting information that can basically serve the populace.
My pure guess is, I would say 50% of the news is reporting on how the other news is wrong, rather than just putting out the news. Well, CNN would say this, but it's this. Well, Fox would say, instead of just reporting the news, they are pointing the finger at each other, and then the news comes after.
Right.
That's what I would guess. And again, I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to look into it.
That's why I like reading as opposed to watching.
Well, again, when I read this, I'm scrolling through. I'm trying to find the part that indicates where the people from CNN had their eyes open to Fox.
Can you find the report? Have you even found the report?
No,
Do you know
not.
even the name of it? Did they even mention the name of it?
No.
I wanted to come on with that. I apologize. If I find it, guys, I'll post it.
No, it just
on the
says a new
website.
study.
But here's the thing. They actually had a graph. And they showed, like, it was a Fox graph and it was a CNN graph. On the Fox graph, they showed, like, I don't know, 20 subject matters that Fox was talking about, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 25. And they showed how much for each subject matter, how many times did Fox talk about it in this particular period, right? So let's just say Donald Trump's taxes. You know, let's just use that for example, right? They would talk about it 20,000 times. That same subject matter, if CNN was going to talk about it, CNN would talk about it like 5,000 times.
Yeah.
Which means, or, you know, that was a bad example, but like, let's say.
No, I got it. They're going to go insanely high about it.
The election being stolen. Let's say the election
Yeah.
being stolen. You know, Fox would talk about it 20,000 times. CNN would only talk about it 5,000 times. So it was like a very big gap in how many times Fox would talk about it and how many times CNN would talk about it. The second graph they showed was CNN's topics and how many times they talked about it versus Fox. What I found interesting, but again, I watched this interview on CNN, so they didn't point this out. But what I found interesting was that, yes, the gap was there.
Yeah.
CNN talked about it way more than Fox, but the gap was much smaller. So like where CNN would talk about things like if Fox said 20, if CNN would do 5,000, so there's like a 15,000 time gap. When you were watching the CNN, it would be CNN would talk about it, let's say 20,000 times, and Fox would talk about it 10,000 times.
Yeah.
Which means that even though, yes, CNN talked about it way more, Fox still spoke about CNN's topics more than CNN spoke about Fox's topic. I mean, by a lot, by a landslide. And it's like, wow, man. So even